2003, and we're in the home of Dorothy and Lloyd Hoobler in St. Mary's, Kansas. Dorothy was born in Uniontown, Pennsylvania on January the 13th, 1925, so she's just turned 88 years old. She will be the main person that we're interviewing today, but we also want to include her husband Lloyd, who is in a care home in Rossville, is it?
Yes.
And he's had Alzheimer's disease for a couple of years already.
He's been there for 2 years.
He's already been there for 2 years, and he's really not able to talk with us, so we're asking Dorothy to do double duty here this afternoon. And my name is Dean Schoengert, and I'll be the interviewer today. Dorothy, can you remember back when, before the war started, what you were doing and what life was like for you?
Yes, I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, and
What kind of farm?
dairy farm,
Oh,
and went to work. I had 1 year of college, and because my sister was in college too, and she had 3 years, and I only had 1, so it was up to me to go to work and let her finish college.
oh.
So I went to Baltimore and worked with the Social Security Department, and met Lloyd. He was stationed at Fort Meade after he came back from service, and I met him at Fort Meade in Baltimore. We had a servicemen's group, and at the YWCA, and the fellows would come in on Sunday evenings, because the girls were mostly working on a night shift, but Sunday evening was the free time, and so we got supper, and just usually hamburgers or hot dogs or things like that, and the fellows got to coming in, and there were 4 of us girls in the apartment, and we all managed to find men from the, and I still write to them, and they came by. A couple of the girls came by let's see.
That's okay.
Sit still.
You still have contact with all 4 of the women? And
With 3 of them.
3 of them, But when did you get married?
Got married in 1945.
Oh.
After he was discharged from service.
Oh, so you weren't married during the time of his service?
No.
And what kind of work were you doing?
It was balancing work. I checked the Social Security applications, and that was to balance out, and we had to make sure everything balanced okay, and so that was what I did.
Kind of a new experience from the dairy farm.
Yes,
wasn't
it was. It was. It's kind of difficult for somebody that hadn't done much, but just regular work,
This was more clerical work.
Clerical work. Mm-hmm.
But were there many girls going into Baltimore and Washington, D.C.?
Yes. The place was full. Well, wasn't anybody else to do it. The men were all in service, and most of the girls were either working at regular jobs, or else they had jobs like that, or defense work, and
Mm-hmm.
so.
Any of these four women you're talking about, they have clerical work like that, or were they some of them in defense factories?
No, they all did uh, similar things at the Social Security
Uh,
group.
did you live together, you four?
Yes, we had an apartment.
You rented an apartment together.
Hmm.
How did you meet?
The girls?
Yes, you didn't all leave home together, did you?
No, didn't know any of them until we got down there, and I don't know, I don't even remember anymore. I guess they had somebody who was kind of taking care of seeing that we all got situated someplace, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's how
Okay.
that happened.
So did you do your own cooking in your
Oh
apartment?
yes, learned to cook.
Oh. uh, did you share the cost and share the cooking,
Yes.
or how did that work?
We shared. Pretty much took turns on weekends and so forth and so on.
Were your working hours the same for all four of you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We were all on the night shift.
So
And after got off work at 12:30 in the morning, and found the streetcar and took the streetcar to the apartment. And
were you alone at that time? Were there others traveling with you?
well, we were pretty much traveling together. We met after work, and
I see.
there were a lot of kids, a lot of girls.
Do you have any scary experiences getting home at night like that?
Not then, but I do now when I think about it. I think we were crazy to go out at that time of night and alone.
You got out at 12:30. You started work at
12:30.
2 or something like that?
Gosh, I guess so. I don't even remember. Must have been
That's
about.
interesting. Did they have 3 8-hour shifts at your office building? Somebody started work after you left, or was that
No,
the end of the day?
that was the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. You remember how much you were making at that job?
Not very much compared to now. I don't even remember.
Well, were you paying for your apartment? Do you remember?
Well, by the time the four of us split, it
Mhm.
wasn't all that much.
So you were able to save some money.
We were able to save some money.
Mm-hmm. When did you start going to the servicemen's? Was it the Y you said? Or
Yes, YWCA.
when did you start going there? On Sunday nights, was it?
Oh, I suppose I've been working there maybe a half a year.
Half a year before you met Lloyd?
Mm-hmm.
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 So then,
That came open.
how long did you stay there then?
Well, until he finally got discharged. He was supposed to go back overseas again after a while, but he'd had a football injury when he was in high school, and went all through his years in the Army with this football injury. And when they went to send him over to Germany, his foot was so swollen that the doctor said he wasn't to go overseas. So he went into the And let's see, he was a machine gunner, instructor then.
Oh, an instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So you met there, and then.
So we met. That's how I met him. And after he got through service, why, we were married.
Oh.
At your home?
At my home in Pennsylvania. And I, of course, didn't know any of his family or anything till I got out here already married. So it was crazy. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. Worked out fine for me. It's been 56 years, so. But it could have been disastrous for a lot of us. But all four of us stayed married, so I guess it worked out all right.
Where did some of them go?
Well, one of them married a dentist, and he's retired now, and he's in Virginia. And one of them married a fellow who ended up with a laundry business and did really well. And then the sister of the girl who married the laundryman, I think she went back to her hometown in West Virginia. So.
Maybe if you look at Marjorie, it's better. I don't know.
What? Where was the base that he worked at?
At Fort Meade.
Oh.
When he was in
back there.
Back there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse
That's
me.
all right. So, after you met, it was like 6 months or so before you got married?
Wasn't that long. It was probably maybe 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go home and introduce him to the family first.
Oh, you took him to Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came out here after we were married because his folks were out here.
Has your family been able to, your parents been able to visit here?
Oh, yes. About every 2 years, either we went back there or they came out here. So.
What was Lloyd doing here?
Well, he started out working with the elevator, and then he went into a dehydrator, alfalfa dehydrator, and finally, with the co-op, he got and did some irrigation work with the co-op. That's what it was doing when he retired.
You've been living in this house for how long?
Let's see, about 54 years.
54 years. Any children in your family?
We have 2. We have a son who is a psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia, and our daughter is a nursery school teacher in Topeka.
Oh.
So we have 3 grandchildren, 1 great-grandson.
Going back to your job in Baltimore, I'm imagining a big office building.
Huge.
With how many floors?
I think we were on the 7th floor.
7th floor, and would this be a big room with
just desk after desk after desk.
And almost all the workers were young women?
Oh, young women or old men?
Well, that was the experience in those days. Everybody did something.
We were on the bay. And so
You probably hadn't experienced a big city much before that, had you?
Oh no, oh no. It was an experience for a lot of young girls.
Did you, when you first went did you see the application in the paper, or how did you find out about the job?
I don't even remember. I think it was in the paper.
And did you go there by yourself first time, or?
No, I think probably my dad took me because I never did learn to drive.
Oh.
And still don't.
Really?
Huh.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Okay, so the streetcar was
The
helpful
streetcar
for you
was
to
a
get
necessity.
back. How long a ride do you have on the streetcar?
Oh, probably half an hour.
Half an hour. Okay.
Did Lloyd tell you about any ship experiences that he had in the Aleutian Islands? I understand the waves get pretty high.
They were pretty high, and I think they almost capsized a time or two, but they got out all right. And
So he entered the service shortly after the war started?
well,
41, did you
41,
say?
uh-huh.
That would be,
Well, yeah.
that would be very early.
December, the same month, it was the end of the month. Pearl Harbor was on the 7th of December, and he went in on the 27th of December.
Was he drafted?
Yes.
He was called up immediately, just like my older brother was.
He went in with the National Guard outfit in Missouri.
Oh.
So they were filling up their ranks, and that's how he got.
You know where he went for basic training? The state?
In Missouri.
In Missouri.
Yeah. And then he was at Camp Callan in California. And he went in to service from Camp Callan.
And so then, about when did his first assignment was the Aleutians? Out of the country?
His first assignment was, yes, it was in Alaska, in Cold Bay, Alaska. And then he was sent to the Aleutians.
I see.
Because not very many people know that the Aleutians had been invaded by the Japanese, and there was a group of Japanese soldiers
on one of the islands.
on one of the islands. And that's why they were sent up there for protection for California. So
he was in the infantry, so what was his main activities there in the Aleutians?
marching.
Marching.
In the Aleutians, mostly fighting snow.
Uh-huh.
It was terrible weather all the time. Lots of heavy snow drifts, and he used to
just take off your glasses.
told how they had ropes between the buildings, so they had to hold on to the ropes so they didn't get lost. I guess they did lose one fellow, but
the wind was so terrific.
The wind was so terrific, and
the
snow and the snowdrifts.
snow.
Some of his pictures, I think the saddest picture he had is one where it had been a heavy snowfall, and it was taken inside the tent, and everything was just covered with snow inside the tent. But that's the way it was. So.
You'd think they would have had more permanent structure by that time, but...
Well, they were the first ones down there by that time. And they eventually did get some permanent structures.
Was he special kind of gunner, or machine gun? Did you say? Machine gunner. So he probably had to man machine gun posts wherever they were. He was up there like 3 years.
2 years. 1 year in Cold Bay, and 1 year just before he got sent to Cold Bay. And they were there about 3 years. Then they brought him back and sent him to Texas in their winter uniforms, and it was just awful, I guess. So,
well, at least you weren't.
I wasn't part of that.
You weren't anxiously waiting on letters or anything.
No.
You were a homesick girl away from home in Baltimore.
Right. That's about right. So.
He tell you any other stories that you can remember?
Oh, they were on the telephone crew too, and he had a lot of stories and pictures of the climbing the poles in Alaska and on the islands, and he didn't see him at any combat, but I guess that was all right too.
I assume he went up there by ship and came back by ship, and his unit pretty much stayed together?
Pretty much stayed together. A lot of course, the men were National Guard men, and they pretty much stayed together. We went to their reunions up until about 5 years ago. They had their reunions down in Missouri.
How many people are we talking about coming to those reunions?
Well, there were about
50 to 100?
Something like that.
Well, he got back to Texas in his winter uniform, and what time of the year?
Well, that was in the summer then when he came back. So he was warm for a while anyway, till it turned cold again.
Did they just, from Texas, how did he get to?
Well, then he was sent back to Fort Meade to go overseas. And
oh,
then
I see.
Then they decided his leg was too bad, and so. And he still has trouble with it.
So then it was like 45 when he got out of the service, and you were married. You married before he got out of the service, or?
Yes, we were married right after he got out of service, and so we must have been, I don't know. Never even thought about counting up to see how old he was. I know I wasn't 21 yet, because my birthday was not till January, and so we went in to get our license, and the lady wouldn't give us a license because I wasn't 21 yet, so we had to go back and get my dad.
When were you married? What date?
November the 11th. No, 13th. November 13th. 1945. So, anyway.
When did this Alzheimer's begin to affect Lloyd? What did you notice first?
Well, I think a lot of it started when he had a hip replacement. When he worked on the elevators and the irrigation. He did a lot of climbing, and his legs wore out, and he had to have this one hip went bad, and they had to replace the hip. And that lasted real well for about 10 years.
Oh my.
And then it started in again 2 years ago. And when they went in to replace it again, they found that it had been eroded so badly that they had a hard time getting it fixed this time. And I think that's what really started it again. He was under the anesthetic for too long. They finally told us that at his age and the type of injury it was, he shouldn't have been under anesthetic that long. And it kind of started it. Mm-hmm. And just went from bad to worse. Of course, he went to the nursing home first, and then it just kept getting worse and worse. And he's been there to be 2 years in August. Mm-hmm. And so...
So this picture is your 50th wedding anniversary?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Do you celebrate that here in Westmoreland or St.
St.
Mary's?
Mary's, yes.
So, how many years you been married now?
56 or 57, something like that.
Like that. Uh-huh. Okay. Turn it just a little.
This way?
Yeah, that's great. Uh-huh. Then we have some medals that Lloyd had from the service.
Mm-hmm.
We won't be able to tell about all of those, but...
Well, 11 is, let's see, well, this was his "Don't Kick Our Dog" that was the emblem.
Can you tip it up? Are those loose so they slide?
Oh.
No, that's good enough. Don't kick our dog.
Don't kick our dog. And his dog tags.
And what's the bear?
Well, that's what he wore on his sleeve. I don't know.
I think that was the battalion.
I think so.
Well, very interesting.
So.
It's got various...
You said he was born in Nebraska.
He was born in Nebraska.
How'd you get to St. Mary's?
Well, his grandparents lived there, and his dad and mother went up to Nebraska to work on the farm with the grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was the First World War, so then they came back. His mother and dad came back to Kansas. And that's how they happened to be here.
So his parents, his father was in World War I, you say?
No, he wasn't. He was a farmer.
Just during the war time?
During the war, uh-huh. They weren't as strict in getting everybody in like they were for the World War II.
Okay, well, we thank you very much, Dorothy.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I...
wish we had done this sooner so we could have included Lloyd in this.
Well, he's been really busy.
Is he in a wheelchair now?
Has been in the wheelchair ever since his last surgery. But he can make it go.
Yeah.
Oh my, he just goes lickety-split up and down the halls. Over my feet, and everybody else is away. But,
do you have somebody that takes you down there
Yes.
regularly?
The lady who owns the newspaper takes me down on Tuesdays when she takes the newspapers down for delivery. And then
great.
usually somebody else takes me down at least that last part of the week.
Oh, good.
So,
Well, thank you very much for telling
Well,
us about your life and his
certainly-
life and your life together during World War II.
well, it's been a good one.
From England across the Channel to France and all from Germany clear over to Czechoslovakia in a Jeep like that and back again several times probably.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you got home
Yeah.
and you got out of the service pretty